Hi, my name is Nick Burnham and I'm here for Motorboat and Yachting magazine to give you a few pointers as to the things you need to think about doing when you're sea trialling a boat prior to purchase. Now it's important to understand that this isn't a replacement for a survey or a professional engine inspection. These are just a few things that you might want to consider when you come down to try the boat yourself. The first thing to bear in mind is that most brokers would expect to have the deal agreed and a 10% holding deposit subject to a satisfactory survey and sea trial. Now you need to make sure that the broker understands that that sea trial is at your discretion. In other words, it's not just whether there's any faults with the boat, it's whether or not you like the boat. What you don't want to do is go out in a boat, find you can't see out properly, find it's too noisy, get told that's not actually a fault, and then you can't have your deposit back. You need to make sure that it's agreed that you have the ultimate say on whether or not you're satisfied with that sea trial. Now another thing that you need to be very aware of, particularly with planing boats, is that the hull is clean and free of any weed or slime or anti-fouling. It does make a colossal difference to the performance of the boat, and it will make assessing the boat very difficult if it's not performing as it should. If you're having a survey, it makes a lot of sense to have the survey first, because then when the boat's lifted for survey, it can be pressure washed and the hull then would be clean and the boat will be performing as it should. Another thing I would mention is that if you boat regularly with a partner, a wife, a husband, whoever, it's worth taking them along to get their opinion and just to give you a second pair of eyes. It's also quite nice if the owner comes along, because he knows the boat. If you've got any questions, he's probably better placed to answer them than the broker might be. But obviously the broker's there to do that job, so if the owner can't make it, then the broker should be able to answer any questions and help you with any of those queries. Now before we set sail, the other thing I would suggest is make sure that the engines aren't started before you come down. You want to come down and see those engines start up from cold, check for any excessive smoking, and just make sure that they start up okay. You've got to be realistic about this. If it's an old boat, they will smoke from cold. Newer boats with electronic management systems should be pretty much smoke free, so take a realistic attitude on that. Once that's all in place, you're pretty much set to go boating. We've got this lovely Trader 535 signature here. We're going to take it out and give you a few more pointers as to what you should do out at sea. Now if you're buying a faster boat, it's important to get it out in the river into some open water where you can assess it properly. It's no good buying a boat that will do 30 knots and giving it a quick 10-second burst in the river. That's not going to tell you anything. Get out in some clear water where you can build the revs up and just get a feel for how the boat performs and how it feels. It's worth getting hold of the specifications of the engines. They're often on the internet to give you an idea of what the maximum revs should be, and also an idea of what the maximum speed of the boat should be, and just make sure that it's doing what it should do. Keep an eye on the gauges, make sure that they're matching across one side to the other. You will find that the water temperature on one engine may run slightly cooler, because one engine typically feeds a chlorophyll, which is a hot water tank, and therefore has a longer run. You want to run the boat up to maximum revs and just make sure that the temperature stays steady, doesn't start overheating. But you've got to bear in mind that at this point it's still somebody else's boat. What you don't want to be doing is out here thrashing it mercilessly. It's not something you do if it's your own boat, it's not something you should be doing with somebody else's boat, but you should certainly pick the revs up to maximum, at least for maybe a minute or two. Just make sure that everything is behaving as it should. Check the steering, give it a wind from lock to lock, make sure the boat performs correctly. Make sure it's not binding. And beyond that, it's just really a case of making sure you're happy with it. Check the noise levels are good, check the visibility is good, check the seat comfort is good, make sure you can see out properly, and just make sure it's the sort of thing that once you own the boat, you'll be happy to use for however long you keep it. So we're back in port now, and hopefully that's given you a couple of good pointers for things that you can do or look out for whilst out on sea trial. Another thing you might want to do is, when you come back into the marina, just have a go at manoeuvring the boat. You probably won't be allowed to berth it, but it's certainly worth trying it in close quarters just to see how it feels. The final thing to do is have a little look under the engines again, just see if there's any fresh oil under there. Again, you've got to be realistic. On an old boat, 15, 20 years old, they will inevitably weep a little bit of oil, but there shouldn't be pools of it down there. On a newer boat, there shouldn't be any at all. But it's important to remember this isn't a substitute for a professional engineer's report on the engines or a survey. It's just a few pointers so that when you're out trialling a boat, you've got a few things to look at and to do.